We're here to talk about the free plugins that I actually use. I know this is a bit of a right turn for my channel. We'll talk about that at the very end, but without further ado, let's just get into it. As you can see, this has been broken up into a few different categories. So we have instruments, Airwindows plugins, analog obsession plugins, and then additional companies. So for instruments, there are only 3 things that I use on a regular basis. I use Labs by Spitfire Audio, and typically I'm using this either for like atmosphere, something that's really in the background, or in some cases as a layer. So let's see, what's a good example? So in these strings, I tend to use these all the time to layer with additional pads or things of that nature. Really enjoy the layout of this plugin compared to something like, say, Contact, because for quick and easy, down and dirty, there's just a few different things you can tweak and then you're off to the races and you can continue with your production. Second on the list, we have OBXD. The reason why I use this one is because I don't have an actual third-party Oberheim synthesizer in my collection, if you will. So I think Softtube has one. I think there's one on Plugin Alliance. There's probably a few other ones out there. This one, though, does sound good. It sounds close to getting those original Oberheim type sounds, the pads or whatever. And one of the things I like about this free synthesizer compared to some other free synthesizers is the ability to swap between presets. You can do that very quickly. So you can go in and you can choose a different bank very quick. And then you have the ability to either go in and choose the program from here, or inside of Bitwig Studio, I can scroll through and I can, pick different things like so. So I definitely appreciate that. And it's one of the reasons why this has made the list. Obviously, if you've never tried it out before, you can download it and listen to it. The purpose of this video isn't to demo these things. So that is OBXD. And finally, we have the SQ8L, which I think is maybe based on a Moog Voyager, maybe a couple other things. This one's only Windows 32-bit. And navigating this one does kind of stink. Trying to get to the presets you want to get to is not super duper easy. It's kind of very old school in the way that it works. Also, it has a very limited number of voice counts, but some of the sounds that you can just very quickly pull out of this thing from the presets are super unique. And that's why I like it. So for certain genres of music, this does make an appearance or makes multiple appearances in a production for me. And that's it for the instruments. Those are the 3 that I go to and use. On now to Airwindows. Airwindows can pair really nicely with Bitwig Studio since there is no interface to these plugins. There's nothing that you pop out. So you're just going to have some sliders and things you can work with. There's pros to that, there's cons to that. I actually do like some of the compressors and the dynamic processors that Airwindows has, but because there's no ability to really see your signal coming in and adjust threshold and see gain reduction, I actually don't like using them just because that's something I'm comfortable and used to doing. And this kind of brings up one of our major points here in this video is that the free plugins you use should be things that are quick and easy or things that fit into your workflow. So that somewhat is dictating these choices that I've made here and what I'm showing you. So the first one is Air. I believe there is an Air 2 that's out that I'll have to check out, but very quick and easy. You have these different taps and you can, add or subtract accordingly. The next one is the Baxandall, which has a treble and a bass control. So for very quick frequency toning, shaping, this one's great, super clean sounding, like the way it works, can't complain. The next one we have is Bright Ambience 3. Now this one is like a slapback delay that sounds really good on pop vocals and occasionally on pianos or guitars, like a lead type of sound. I enjoy using it specifically for that. So this does not make an appearance in all of my productions, but if it calls for it, it's a great free plugin that to do inside of Bitwig Studio or to bring in another plugin, there's usually more things you have to tweak and more annoying things you have to go through. So that's the reason why I like this one and why I use it. The next thing is Bus Colors. Very simple plugin to use. And typically this is used just so that I can hear some different sounds. So you have these different modes and you can then drive the input in if you want to, or the auto gain. So that's going to boost and cut at the same time. So that one I have to go to 2 different areas. Or I could actually, I believe, look at the plugin here and I would have all the control over there as well if I just want to flip through. So you can see how I've had to set that up in Bitwig Studio. That's the way I like to work with it. Simple and easy. The next one is Butter Comp 2. Now, I really like this one. Sorry, I had to make a microphone adjustment. I really like this one because it is what it sounds like. You can barely, if ever, even hear the compression that's being applied, but you know what's happening. So I tend to bring this in when I want transparent compression. Very good again in pop, very good in electronic music, where you can just crank this thing up to like somewhere between 70 and 90 is where I use it, and it usually does the job for me. Not going to be for everybody. Again, you can't actually see what you're doing like you normally do with a compressor, so it makes it a little more challenging, but I like that one a lot. Channel 9, this one is a few different consoles that you can just kind of bring in and add some drive to. Again, these are just color things. So if I'm using something like Serum or I'm using a built-in synthesizer in my DAW, I almost always throw something like this on just to add some flavor and some color, or to do it on the buses, etc. So I love things like this, whether they make a big deal or not. It is something that I do use, and I love the simplicity of it. So that's why it's here. I should make a remote control page for it as well. Interstage, there's literally nothing to this one. It's just something that if I have a big processing chain going, or again, I'm using something that sounds very digital, you just throw it on there. You can put it in between plugins. You can add multiple instances of it. It adds some density to the sound. So I'm a big fan of that. There's not really even anything commercial that's like that, and it very little CPU usage. Probably one of my favorite Airwindows plugins, just to try to add some beef and grit without it being overly obnoxious. And then we have our Purist series. So we have Purist Air, which I like. We have Purist Drive, and I'll, you just kind of got to try these things out. Purist Squish, which I like again. These are things that you just bring on to a signal if it needs it. So if you want to add a little bit of saturation without it being super obnoxious or heavy, Purist Drive. You need to compress the sound a little bit without it being super obvious or noticeable, Purist Squish, and Purist Air to increase the brightness a little bit. And then the last one on here is just simply called Tape. So if you don't want to bring in like, the UHE tape or some of these other emulations that go so deep that have so many controls, just again, very quickly for peaky materials specifically, whether those are drum hits, drums, whatever, you might just throw this on first and see if it does the trick for you. Very quick, very easy. Again, the way I've set these up in Bitwig Studio. So that is what I use from Airwindows. There are other phenomenal plugins that he's put out that you can experiment with and try, but these are the ones that are so easy and quick for me to use that I use them a lot, and they serve a purpose that I can't really do as quickly or efficiently with commercial stuff or with built-in stuff in the DAW. Moving on to Analog Obsession. Now this is an interesting one because some people are going to tell you don't use any of these things, they're complete trash. Other people are going to say these things are all amazing. I like these for a lot of the same reasons why I like the Airwindows stuff. A lot of these I actually have like the UAD equivalent of, but I don't always work on a UAD interface, and I don't want to buy another like set of these. So I find that a lot of them work really well. Sometimes I actually prefer them to the UAD versions. But anyway, these are, analog modeled type plugins. The Brit Pre, simple and easy. Again, it can add something to the sound. If you bring in a drum loop or something and you want to just put a little bit more oomph and color into it, this one works great. It also has 2 filters you can apply, has the mic emulation as well, which I don't typically use, but you can try it out. The Brit Presser, I actually really like. This one's tricky to work with. It's kind of confusing the way it works. You have your limiter here, and then that you'll see on this particular meter, and then the compressor is down here. There's no attack time to set, but for again, a drum loop and something, or even like an entire bus, sometimes this can work quite well. I really like it. I like having the limiter and the compressor together, and then you have your side chain options over here. If you want to, again, push a particular frequency or have it not listen as strongly to another one, those are your options in there. Definitely one to try. Fetish is your classic 1176 FET style, and it does great. I really like it. It has the slam mode. It doesn't work the attack and release the way it would work on a regular unit, but that doesn't matter. Just really quick and easy to work with. Again, you have your sidechain options over here. One of my favorite ones, I actually usually prefer this one to the UAD, which is crazy. considering that's what they're known for. But again, it's everyone's personal opinion and what sounds good. This is a nice little amplifier, leveling amplifier that you can try on, again, any kind of material. It's something that I don't have in any other commercial type plugin, so occasionally I'll try that out. The LALA, again, I have this in UAD, but for simplicity's sake, if I know I'm going to be working on different audio interfaces, I'm just going to throw this thing in instead, and it's fine. It does what it's supposed to do. This one I really like on certain materials, can bring up some of the bass sound on things, so the bass enhancer. And then we have a couple more of these preamps. And again, UAD has the unison technology, and these things kind of mirror that. Of course, it's not happening, at the console level on UAD. It is happening as a plugin here, but occasionally, again, just like with the Brit Pre, sometimes you just want to add a little bit extra. You have an EQ built in, like your classic, what the heck is that thing called? Pultec EQ. So you have a boost at 12K and then you can attenuate right after. Same thing more likely is going to be done with the low end. So 100, and then you can do that little cut right after, and then just a basic preamp, and it's great. Same thing with, let me go, this one I'll save for last. Tuba, again, something like this I have for UAD. In fact, I think that is what my voice is being processed through right now. Really like this one. It does what it's supposed to do, adds some grit, cool little plugin, a lot of fun. And then the last one is sketchy. Like this one doesn't always work, but sometimes, again, if you just want to try and add something to a signal that you feel is lacking or is too generic or too plasticky, I throw this on, and about 20% of the time I can find something that actually is flattering. Most of the time I can't. I think these are just kind of like raw impulse responses. But it's not a bad plugin, because if even 20% of the time, that can be good when you don't have anything else like this in your library, your plugin library that's quick and easy to use. So that is what I tend to use from Analog Obsession. You might be saying, well, where are the EQs? To be honest, I don't really like the layout of most of their EQs. They're not very intuitive. So I have enough EQs that I want third-party wise. I only pull to a couple different things. So that's the reason why you don't see any standalone EQs. For you and your situation, you might like them. You might need to use them, to each their own. And finally, we're going into our additional category here. So from some different companies, and we'll start with OTT. For better or worse, if you're making that style of music that calls for OTT, you're going to use it. It takes a little while to get used to figure out where you want to kind of set the middle bar, if you will, and then you kind of set your balances. But a very easy plugin to work with ultimately, because a lot of people just bring it in and that's it. That's how they set it. So nothing wrong with doing that either. If you make this style of music, like hard electronic things where you need over-the-top compression, this is a good plugin to use, and people will continue to use it for a long time. The next one we have is Luftikus, which is based on like the Mag EQ. This little thing is amazing, especially for vocals or voiceover podcast type stuff. This is an amazing little slider here. I pretty much always work it in mastering and keep gain. And after doing your typical parametric EQ and either your DAW or something like the Fab filter, coming in and then having a fixed frequency EQ is just great. So I love this one because it's so easy and straightforward, and this little magic air slider is great. The next thing we have is FreshAir. So if that doesn't do the trick, I might try FreshAir, or I'll try one of those things from Airwindows. And you might be asking, well, why do you have so many options? Because the way that you add air, sometimes it can come off really harsh. So depending on the material, the source material that you're feeding it, it is good to have some options there. And my DAW just doesn't have anything like that built in. And even for my third-party stuff, I can't really think of anything that I've paid for that does what these free plugins do. So that's why I have all those options. In the reverb world, especially with Bitwig Studio, you kind of need to have a couple additional reverbs besides what's stock. I do have some paid ones. Obviously, the Valhalla stuff is great, but this is an amazing reverb. I always start with the preset of what I'm kind of looking for, And then from there, I'll go and I'll tweak. So I use that to set the variations on the early reflections and on the reverb, and then I can tweak accordingly, but usually it does a pretty good job just out of the box. The other great feature of this reverb, which is not something that you find in even a lot of paid reverbs, is the fact that I can just set like early reflections if I want to add a little bit more to a voice or to a synthesizer. So that's something unique and one of the reasons why this thing is really good. And the quality is it's a really good reverb, as good as most of the commercial stuff. That's why I have it. That's why I use it. Tal Reverb 4, great at getting you that diffuse 80s sort of reverb, super rich. It's what you expect from Tal. Use it all the time if it's appropriate, quicker to set up than what's built into my DAW. So that's why it's here. Same thing with the chorus. Use it all the time. Enough said, it's a great chorus. Dimension expander. I debated putting this one in or not putting it in, but I do still go and use this a lot of times. It's kind of like the Dimension D. You can get some different sounds on it. It's cool. You know, it's unique. It's not something that your DAW just has built in. So if you haven't used it before, you can check it out. The Valhalla space modulator, again, I debated putting this in or not. I don't use it all the time, but it has tons of different options and cool modulation, feedbacky type sounds, chorus. You know, you can see they have all these things, chorus and doublers and weird. So it's a fun one, definitely worth checking out. The magic switch, one button, adds that 80s flair, okay? Again, not something my DAW does. I do use it if it's appropriate. And then last but not least, we have the span. If you are in need of a spectrum analyzer and your DAW one, and honestly, the thing is my DAW one is fine, the one inside of Bitwig, but I'm so used to using the span that's why it's here. I like this one. I'm used to using it. So it made the cut, and it's at the very end for that reason. So there you have it. Those are all of the free plugins that I use. And now for a few final thoughts. So final takeaways. The biggest point that I want to make is that value is very relative. So these things are free, but I don't care that they're free. If they were things that I had to pay for, almost all of these things I would pay for because they do something unique and I use them a lot in my music. And that's the important part of this. You might be watching through this and you're going, why didn't he give a shout out to X synthesizer? Or why is there not a shout out to X equalizer? That's free. And the reason is I don't use it, or I don't see a purpose to use it. It's not user friendly to me, or I have something commercial paid for. So I don't really even care that it exists, because if it did something that those didn't do, I would probably have it on here unless I've just never heard of it before. And so that's the reason why these things are being featured and why they're being shown to you. These are things that either I don't have a commercial version of, they give me more variation, like some of those Airwindows saturator type stuff. Same thing with like the Analog Obsession. These aren't the highest quality, highest grade plugins in the world. I know that, but if it does what you want it to do and it helps your productions, that's all that matters. And you can't really put a value on that, because for you, that value is going to be different to somebody else. And I think that's the point I wanted to make, because I've just gotten so annoyed with YouTube, and I think I'm about done with YouTube, to be honest, of doing any music production tutorial stuff. If I ever continue to do it, it's probably going to be on my own website, and I'm just not going to pay attention to YouTube at all. Because I just find that a lot of this stuff is so clickbaity, and it's trying to play the YouTube algorithm more than it is trying to actually help people get better at music production. There's no must-haves at all. There's no must-haves plugins. There are must-haves for me. There are probably must-haves for you, and it's worthwhile listening to somebody explain why that is a must-have plugin to them. But for me, in this list, these are all things that my DAW can't do, or they're things that commercial plugins, I need more variation, or it's, again, something completely unique that serves my purposes. So rant over. Hope you've enjoyed the videos. If you have any questions, I don't do a great job of responding to them, but maybe somebody will respond to you down in the comments. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.